This podcast is a part of the More Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Leader Podcast by Pattern Talent, where we interview great leaders and we seek to understand leadership. I'm Brad McDonald.
And I'm Taylor Jessup, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode.
And we started. For those of you who don't know, because you're listening on audio, Brad just did what I think would be, is like a curtsy kind of thing to start the show. Yeah, very epic. And we're back for a Leadership Lounge episode, which we have abbreviated because we're really cool to The Lounge.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting is, so the little short that we did with Jesus on YouTube about the lounge and calling it the lounge, like that actually performed relatively well, even though the short was basically a short about nothing.
It was a short about Keanu Reeves and John Wick, which is why it performed well.
Fair
it had
enough.
nothing to do with us.
No,
That's why.
We should talk. Okay.
It's like going to the Continental.
Let's just talk about Costco for the next 2 minutes, because apparently everyone loves Costco. Can we just...
If you don't love Costco, the chances are that you are a Sam's Club person. And I'm not sure if you and I are going to get along that well. There is part of a sincerity in me that believes that. It's kind of the same way I feel like I even have friends that this is going to hurt their feelings. They probably don't listen to the podcast. If your text messages come up green on my phone, on my iPhone, ew, man. It like hurts my eyes and my heart. I know there's like a legal battle even going on that I don't know much about, but yeah, like what? I think Apple's like literally getting sued because they have iMessage. Basically, Apple, in my opinion, is the kids on the playground doing whatever they want, and the other kids are complaining, going, "We don't get to do that. Like, we want to play that game too." And they're like, "Okay, well, I guess you're gonna have to take it up with our lawyers." So, Costco, I did go this week. I don't know if you've been this week. Probably not.
No. Well, we use our mother-in-law's account. Costco, don't be mad. I'm sorry.
Dude, yeah, you
I'm
just
supposed to say that.
But you don't check your ID?
We don't go in person. We just order online and then have it delivered to our house, and then we use our credit card.
Doesn't that cost more?
I don't know.
Yeah, it costs more.
Please don't tell me that, because I have to go.
What's Becca? What kind of...
You can't order something and have it delivered to your house and not have it cost you're telling me Costco has free delivery?
No, I mean, I know it's not free, but I'm like, how much? I mean, is it more than like the time it takes me to like get in the car and go down there and like walk around and push
it's
them
not that it's that you're missing out on you're missing out on the goodness of Costco. Go and watch one of the first episodes of Modern Family is Cameron and Mitchell walking around Costco, and Cameron is all uppity about it because he doesn't like it, and they go to Costco, and by the end of the trip he's like, "Mitchell, what is this place?" And like looking around, just mesmerized. And I'm the same way. I get in there and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't need any new t-shirts," but they have new t-shirts. "Oh my gosh, they have this new sauce. Man, I can sample for days." And then on the way out, I got to grab a hot dog and a Coke only because it's just $1.50.
How do you feel about the meatballs at IKEA? That reminds me of the meatballs at IKEA. Are you a fan?
I think I've only had them once, like a long time ago, potentially. I think I've had like I like IKEA too, but I lied. I don't like IKEA because it feels like I can't escape. Like once I'm in, you have to go through everything.
I had approached IKEA to be a sponsor of the Daily Leader, and so you've just poo-pooed.
They're not going to do it now because I don't even get claustrophobic, but in there I get overwhelmed because I'm like, God, this will never end. It's like this long.
We pivot. I want to talk about Trader Joe's too. Along the same lines, I don't like being forced to wander through the whole entire grocery store every time I need something. And now Trader Joe's is a very small footprint. It doesn't take a lot of time. I do get some
You chose the smallest store.
But they don't have signs on the aisles. It's like you don't, unless you're there once a week and you like regularly shop there, how do you know where anything is at?
This could be a height issue, actually. Most people, I think, can actually see like over all the rows in there, but you probably can't.
Wow. You attack me. That's body shaming, actually.
I don't know that it's body shaming. We speak truth on the Daily Leader, Brad. I'm just letting you know that could be part of the problem. So you don't like that it's not labeled. That's not strategic enough for you.
Okay, speaking of body shaming, I have noticed that now that you're a dad, you've been putting on what you refer to as the dad butt.
The dad butt. Yep. People call it the dad bod. I call it the dad butt.
What has it been like running that dad butt around the tennis court the last couple weeks?
Man,
How's that feel for you?
I got to play Wednesday night, and it's hot in Phoenix. It was like 99. It was hot.
Yeah,
I
today,
couldn't breathe.
what are we looking at right now? We're looking at 93 today.
Ooh, it's warming up. It's gonna be like
It's not even
105
noon.
this next week. No, so yeah, man. Yeah, I was feeling it. Mike, we have a guy, Coach Ron. Shout out to Coach Ron, who like leads all these guys and exercise every week, multiple times a week in the morning. We got two other guys that have decided to do their own heavy weight like training at this guy's gym that we call the prison yard because everything is like old and beat up, but they're consistently lifting heavy weights, so they always talk about the weights they put on. And I am not in shape, so it has been tough to keep up there. I go, and it's like my one time to do some adulting with the twins, and I not only run around for 2 hours, I talk the whole time because it's the only time I get to talk, and I annoy the heck out of them. So yeah, my tennis game isn't quite what it used to be, but it's fun, man. It's fun. You get the dad butt out there. I try and work a few calories off the dad butt and keep going. So,
all right. So, question for you is if you could be a pro athlete in any professional sport, which would you choose?
I feel like that answer is changing currently because I grew up and I wanted to be Jerry Rice, which you probably don't know who Jerry Rice is. He's arguably,
of course I do.
Wow, that is impressive for all the jokes that now he's flexing. Nobody can see. Oh God, he walked off camera. Nobody can see these things on like Spotify.
Cool? Could that become a meme?
No, I hope not. Or iHeartRadio. Our iHeartRadio listeners were confused. Brad flexed, walked backwards, and walked off camera because he knew who Jerry Rice was, just to capture that for all of you. Yeah, I wanted to be Jerry Rice growing up. I still would love to play football. I do like that. I'm actually thinking it might be golf. It might be golf. I might go pro in golf.
Wow.
That's what I want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Taylor. Do you know how? Look,
you just walk away from your microphone. You don't understand.
I just bought a putter.
Yeah, I know. And you had no idea how much putters.
A pro golfer now, bro. Okay, putters are expensive.
Yeah, for our listeners out there, Brad had no idea. Like he fortunately found some kid putters for $25, but when I told him that putters can be hundreds of dollars, he was very confused. This is not like going down to the putter shack down the way and having a putt night or the glow in the dark. Putting is hard, man. Drive for dough, putt for show. That's what they say. Nope, other way around. Jeez, I'm not doing well. Drive for show, putt for dough. If your putting is good, chances are you're a decent golfer. So
yeah, I mean, I would say I've got a solid putt happening in my office when I'm just doing not on the video calls. I feel like that's inappropriate, but if it's just an audio only call,
yeah,
I'll putt for maybe an hour while I'm talking to clients. And
don't show us your putt. Don't show us your putt. That's not appropriate. I also, the dad putt is something that I'm working on as well. I know that doesn't make sense, but I'm throwing in a lot of dad jokes today. I'm feeling very dadific.
That's good. Get those out of your system before you have to go face your wife.
Yeah, who will, again, as we've said multiple times, and we cry ourselves to sleep, our wives do not listen to our show, which I think is a good point to start turning. So we are getting into our lounge episodes, which for our listeners who may or may not remember, lounge episodes, we're going to recap. We're going to recap some episodes here. I think on this particular one, we are going to be doing episodes 7 through 9, which is going to be really fun. And this is I'm calling it the hot topics for any of you who listen to Jim Gaffigan and his sketch on Hot Pockets. But also, this is the Americanized version, the wrap down, hey, we're going to simplify it. We're going to give you one takeaway. I'm actually going to time Brad as we kind of go here. I'm going to give him like 90 seconds to give me kind of his best takeaway. We're going to do one takeaway, and then we're going to discuss that. He can throw it back. We can ask questions. And then I want us to get really practical with this stuff of, hey, we have a lot of good content, but let's also land the plane here, right? So
that's right.
With that being said, I think that's enough preface. People want me to stop talking. Brad, we got the chance to talk to Elizabeth.
That's right. Indeed.
And she did great. She wrote a book, Strength of Purpose. All right, so that was a great episode a while back. I want you to tell me, give me one huge takeaway for you.
Okay, so beginning of the book, this is in the know it portion of the book. She quotes Viktor Frankl. And if you don't know who he is, go Google him. Really interesting story. But here's the quote that she highlights. She says, in quoting Frankl, life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And what I took away from this book as like a one sentence summary is that living a life of purpose requires intentionality. And when you, so that's kind of my one sentence summary, but the implications of that would be when you have taken the time to be intentional about understanding, defining, articulating your purpose, you can tolerate an incredible amount of pain, and you can endure that pain for a long period of time because you have clarity on why you're doing what you're doing. And so I've been carrying that with me. I think it's really powerful and would love for our listeners to kind of go back and listen to that episode through that lens.
Yeah. So that's great. I also want to ask our listeners some questions today. So if you think of questions that you want them to comment on, ask that question, Brad. That's really good. So let me understand that correctly. Hey, you made it. You made it in the time. We don't do that often because don't flex. He's doing it again. Doing it again.
I'm done.
Okay. So if I have purpose, I can endure pain and I can push through. Yeah. I think my addition to that would be so much joy is actually found in that purpose, right? So here's the challenge. I think we talked about this on the show. All right. So high level purpose is great. Yay. All those good things. Right. I'm not sure that many people would disagree with that, but I want to spend a little bit of time before we kind of move on to our next episode and let's land that plane. So let's do this two ways. All right. One, let's talk about this personally. Like, how do I find purpose personally? And then two, let's talk about this as a business. How do we find purpose as a business? And then even maybe more important is how do we actually get everybody in line and marching with that purpose, right?
That's good.
Okay, well, what do you think? Personally, I'll start, and then we ping pong here.
That's perfect.
More of the hot topics. So, yeah. So personally, I think we talked a lot about Elizabeth. You have to be willing to actually do the work. I think most people would hear this and they go, "Well, what is the work?" I go, "Well, the work is probably grabbing a journal, maybe grabbing her book, and literally going, okay, why on earth am I here? What am I here for?" Yep. You can start that in a number of places. There's plenty of books to help you with that. Go on.
We would say it begins with curiosity.
Yes.
Sometimes curiosity comes as a result of experiencing pain, letdown, the trials and tribulations of life. We're led to that curiosity individually in different ways. But I think you and I would agree that as we lead ourselves, which is where I'd kind of bucket this conversation, we have to be curious about, okay, why are we here on the earth and how can we best use the limited time that we have?
Yeah, correct. If you're not, then none of this really applies. And fast forward to the next section of this YouTube video, really, or wherever you're listening. Sorry, iHeart.
Or open your mind and reflect a little bit on, am I being curious about my purpose? And if I'm not, number one, why not? What does that tell me? And then number two, what might it look like for me to get curious? I think that's a question you've introduced me to.
Yeah. And I think typically the reason we don't want to be curious about that is because we like where we are more than the fear of moving somewhere else. Comfort. We talked about this on a even more recent episode, but comfort is the killer of any growth.
That's right.
So if I'm comfortable, I'm probably not growing. If I go to the gym and I'm like, you know what? I was really comfortable at the gym today. I hit up my coach and I was really comfortable. Then you go, you're not growing, man. You're not growing.
Coach Ron's not going to let that happen.
No, Coach Ron doesn't let that happen. And I'm going to start inviting people to our workouts with Coach Ron. He doesn't even know that's going to happen, but we'll do it in the park and it'll be great. So we had to get curious, right, about ourselves, about our purpose, and then B, we had to actually do I think the heavy lifting of some kind of process of undoing to try and figure out, okay, like kind of what do I like, or maybe what do I dislike? I think those are two great places to start. So, what do I like? What do I enjoy in life? Which is what brings me life, what brings me joy. But also, what are my complaints? Because often, if I'm complaining about something enough, I might actually care about that enough to do something different. Like that hits a chord, and
Okay.
then get really clear on what that purpose is. Yeah,
All
go.
right. So this is a section, we talk about this book a lot, Integrity by Henry Cloud. I would say this has been one of like the key books that's influenced my perspective on self-leadership. And it's something that I use frequently with clients. But I want to read part of this book because I think it ties in to exactly what you're saying, which is the conversation about values. And he says this: one category of things that transcend us are values. Values form a lot of the architecture of a person's character, his or her shape and personhood. They do the same thing for an organization or relationship. What we value is what we esteem or put above all else, including our self-interests, and then guide our behavior from that heading. And so I think it's really interesting how you're mentioning, hey, what do you like? What do you not like? Those really ultimately flow from our values, the
Sure.
things that we esteem. And so I think there is this incredibly important connection between what is my stated purpose and what are my stated values.
Yeah.
And when we can get clear on both of those, it's almost like we have this force multiplier in facing any kind of difficult self-leadership situation, because I know why I'm here and I know then who I am and what I stand for.
That's good. That's good. Two things. One, I'm going to reach down and grab a book because Brad keeps grabbing books. I'm going to read you an insert out of the wisdom of the Enneagram so that I seem smart as well. But yeah, I think, okay, so let's land that plane a little bit, right? In terms of if we're talking about purpose, purpose is our drive. Purpose allows us to endure pain. It gives us a heading, a true north. Purpose can actually be the source of joy that's not found in probably the like things that we all know we can overindulge in: eating, drinking, sex, rock and roll, like all those kind of things, which are good,
Sure.
good potential things, but in the right order. We got to get clear. We got to actually do the work to get clear on what our purpose is. And I actually think to add into that work is actually really scary. And it's scary because if I get clear, I'm just going to speak from my own experience. If I get clear on what my purpose is, on what I actually want to go to and what my values are, then I can then I can miss the mark. If I don't get clear, then I don't really have to shoot at anything. And so there's no fear of failure. I think a lot of times, what I've seen, at least in my own life, and I have seen this in other people too, is we don't want to, like you use this word multiple times, get clear. If we don't have a clear vision of where we want to go, if we don't have a clear purpose, we're just going to end up somewhere. And that somewhere may or may not be where you actually want to go. So,
well, it's the whole Cheshire Cat effect, right? Like if you don't know where you're going, any path will get you there.
Yeah,
right.
Totally.
And there's this, I think two types of people are drawn towards ambiguity. One type of person is in a victimhood mindset, right? So they get to be the victim of ambiguity.
Yeah, I love being the victim.
It just makes failure and the whole conversation around taking personal responsibility for myself really interesting, because it's just everything's this ambiguous, external, nebulous, unnamed thing that prevents you from whatever.
Yep.
Okay, so that's one type of person, is like sort of the victim person.
Okay.
I would say another type of person who leans this way is maybe, man, how do I say this? Maybe not necessarily a victim. Help me out here. But there's another option. Maybe someone who's hyper vigilant, like maybe the opposite is true too, is where I'm thinking.
So like an overachiever, but they don't necessarily set a specific goal. They just go after everything. Is it like the vision is too broad?
Yes, it's like the hyper perfectionistic, hyperachiever, hyper vigilant. Everything is important and has to be done at a certain level, and so therefore there is no clarity on like what's the priority, what's like really the core of why we're here and who we are, because it seems like everything is non-negotiable.
Okay.
So there's like total ambiguity and then hypervigilance. And we're not talking about either of those things. We're talking about something that's a little bit more wisdom oriented, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about either you avoid purpose because we're afraid to fail or miss the mark, or even sometimes afraid what would happen if we do hit it. What would that look like? Or B is we don't set our purpose or our true north, probably because we're still afraid of what that would be, but we take a different approach. And rather than it being a woe is me, I can't figure it out, it's I'm just going to go after anything that comes after in my path. And so maybe you are an inch deep and a mile wide, which can be really unfulfilling as well.
That's exactly what I'm trying to convey. Yep.
So let's pivot. Let's pivot. In the hot topic that I want to talk about is so great, personal lives. We got to figure that out. And I think there's a lot of ways to do that. Like we said, you can pick up Emily's book. You can go get Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. Good one here could be Leadership and Self-Deception as well, that both of you and I have read, just about getting out of our own way. There's a lot of books that would help you figure that out, or go call a coach, call Brad, call me, and be like, hey, I want to figure this out. For our business, no, don't, he's flexing. Gosh, he's doing it again. Okay, so as a business, and I don't want to spend a ton of time here either because I want to move on. Okay, but here's the thing. As a business, I think we often have this. We often have vision, mission, ideas, but then we don't really put the hands and feet on how that works. So it kind of stays in our heads. My question would be, okay, so let's put hands and feet to this as a business. So we have our purpose, we have our mission, we maybe have our values. Talk to me. If you're coaching somebody, Brad, practically, how do you coach them on sticking to our vision, our mission, our values?
The leaders and the teams who are actually effective in this area. It's what takes fun kind of team conversations like this that we all just enjoy, kind of like social loafing around in a classroom or like a conference room, and the teams who are actually achieving great things. It's how we schedule our purpose and our values across our calendars. And so typically, like when I'm working with a client, we'll talk about all these things. We'll talk about, okay, what is your stated, purpose, vision, mission, values? But then we'll ask the question, how are these things finding their way into your daily rhythms? So let's use an example that both you and I are familiar with, right? Which was our restaurant work. Okay. There was a very, very strong culture in our restaurant of accountability. Okay. And there's reasons why it had to be. Number one, it was a franchised, a Chick-fil-A franchise. Number two, food safety was critical because you're dealing with raw chicken that's being, thawed, breaded, and fried in the building. Number two, your volume, right? Order accuracy, super important because you're ripping 3,000 transactions a day through the drive-through. Accountability looks like something though, right? As it relates to the operations of the business. So first and foremost, we have stated goals, and we're reviewing those stated goals on a regular reoccurring basis. And, that can look like SMART goals. It can look like OKRs. If you're in a continuous improvement environment, it can take lots of, different, you can apply lean principles to that. There's lots of different ways to get at accountability for goals. But more than that, it deals with systems, processes, and ultimately tasks that have to get done by a particular person, by a particular day and time. And then the information about that task has to be conveyed to the rest of the team. And so when we're dealing with an operation, I think it's one of the most practical things we can do is to actually translate our values into goals and then translate those goals into system, process, task, and then have regular conversations where we review those things.
Right.
Okay, was that clear? Could coach me back on if whether or not that?
Yeah, I'll give you a B minus. No, I think which is a pretty good grade for you. I don't know how you did in school. Wow. A lot of people ask that when you get older. They're like, "How did you do in school, Brad? Tell me." No, I think it's good. Yeah, I think a couple things. One is, okay, so the hands and feet of our values is going to be, hey, we set goals that align with potentially our values, our mission, and then we have regular check-ins to make sure that happens. James Clear, which took an old Stoic phrase and then kind of reframed it, right? Which is, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So in our business, we had systems to check in. Some of those were corporate systems, right? Where every hour we had to do checks on, food safety, cleanliness, all those kind of things. Others of them were built-in accountability that we did as a team, right? So cool. How are we doing in terms of our order accuracy, checking on this, checking in with leaders, doing those kind of things. I think that puts some good hands and feet to an option, right? I think, so yes, I think you did a good job. I give you better than a B minus, but I don't want you to flex anymore. So I think that's good. There's lots of practical ways. I think we could do a whole episode on how to make that practical. I just started Infinite Game, right? And he actually talks a lot about this Simon talks a lot about that at the beginning of the book, talking about companies like Lego, who wants to keep creating an environment for people to play. And their hiring process in that, I'm sure, was super important because they found people that actually want to do that. And that company is still killing it, right? Like doing a great job, because those people, like, hey, how often do we do check-ins to go, okay, if our vision is X, how do you feel about that? And this would go all the way into Corey, which would be in our next leadership lounge, right? Do you have enough trust built for somebody to be able to tell you that maybe they don't feel like what they're doing is aligning with the vision of the company, or the vision of the company isn't aligned with whatever, right? And then we got to tweak and change or think about it. I think that's all good. Let's pivot that. Let's pivot. I'm going to make a bunch of pivots today because I want to try and get through the next two pretty quickly here. And let's talk about Vincent. Let's talk about Vincent, man, who was fantastic. You know Vincent really well. So, hot topic number 2. Vincent, biggest takeaway from our time with Mr. Vincent Clark is, go for it, Brad.
I mean, first and foremost, the idea that leadership is serving others. And I think that he used several different stories from his own career, be it both in his restaurant experience through a variety of different brands, in his church work, and his work as a business owner. He just shaped that really well for us. And the way that he did that was kind of this idea that, like, leadership is walking backwards. Yeah. But walking backwards facing your people. So there's this weird image that he painted where it was like, I'm advancing backwards facing my people. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's super interesting. I had never heard anyone describe this is leadership. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like.
Sure.
But the more that I've thought about that image, I feel like it resonates so much with my own experience of trying to be a leader. This idea that, like, I feel like sometimes I can't see where I'm going. And the best way to be successful is actually to keep, turning my head towards the vision and then back towards the people, and then towards the vision and then back towards the people, because where the people are in relation to me tells me how well I'm leading them towards the destination.
Yeah. That's well said. I think a challenge for leaders and for myself can be, I can get so focused on me and charging ahead that I forget to focus on you, the you being my team.
That's right.
So I did a training years ago, leadership training and development tool called 100X Leader. And the whole idea was, rather than being like, hey, we're all trying to summit Everest, but great leaders aren't the ones that are the climber getting to the top. A great leader is a Sherpa, helping others get to the top. And the most successful companies, typically know how to do this, or they have somebody that knows how to do this, which is, like you said, okay, what is the vision? Where are we going? But let me turn around. Let me actually, like, that physical posture of turning around, looking at my team and going, okay, guys, here we are. How do I lead you, like, And not looking back is looking down, which I think is the hard part. I can turn back and go,
Right.
I'm leading my team, but I'm actually looking down. And you can feel that. You can feel the gap between somebody who turns around and somebody who turns around and looks down. Like you can feel that's just, and I think people's BS meters are at an all-time high. They just don't like that, right? Like that is, people are so much less willing to put up with that than maybe they were in 1970, in 1960, when it's just like, well, crap, this is my job. It's what I'm going to do. That is not the way people operate today. They actually want to feel connected with the vision, with the mission, and they want somebody who's willing to turn around and go, hey, how do I help us? How do I help us get there? That's my role. My role is not to look like the, kick butt person out there taking names. My role is to help all of these people be the kick butt person out there taking names, because actually that's the key to exponential growth. I can have one person forging ahead, or I can turn around and have 20, if I do that. So I agree. It was a great point.
Part of what you're, I think, referencing is something else that Vincent's communicated very clearly, which was there is a big, big commitment and sacrifice that comes along with great leadership. We have to be willing to count the cost of making the investments in our people. I think what you're pointing to right now is the time investment, the investment of energy and focus. And obviously we can't take our eyes off the vision or the mission. We're not suggesting that. But what we're suggesting is like a judicious balance between looking at where I'm headed and driving towards that, but also looking around myself at my people and making sure that they're actually still with me.
Yeah.
Right. And that requires sacrifice, commitment, financial, time, resources, all kinds of things. Right. And so his stories, I think, painted a good picture of what that looks like. One final idea here, Taylor, would be something that I think really related to our conversation with Elizabeth, which was we need to help people understand their predisposition for certain things, their values, their purpose. Because if we don't understand that, we cannot plug them in to our efforts and our teams in appropriate ways. And then that becomes what I would call like poor stewardship of resources, which we'll talk about with Ty.
Yeah.
But man, I felt like Vincent did a really good job of conveying how important that is when he referenced his church work, where it's like people love to volunteer. They love to learn and grow in those environments. Everybody likes to feel good about, the kind, warm-hearted things that they're doing in their life. Yep. But man, sometimes, whether it's at work or in another area of life, man, you can be in the wrong lane and you can create a lot of damage. And so he made the point that like, just because someone wants to do something doesn't mean that that's the role for them. And just because someone doesn't want to do something doesn't mean they're not very gifted, skilled, and qualified for that activity. So thoughts on that relative to a vision and mission with our people?
Yeah, you got to know your team, right? And Darren Hardy in the Hero's Journey says, if you don't know your team's hopes, dreams, and fears, you're not leading them. I think all too often we charge ahead and go, and this is my hope, this is my dream, this is my vision, so get on board. And the challenge with that is, what's the most expensive thing in our company?
Labor.
It's our talent, it's our labor, right?
Yep.
Right. And so we can have this giant disconnect with trying to put a round peg in a square hole. And we got to figure out what to do with that particular situation. That may be what we have to do. But I think oftentimes, if we're actually turning around, like Vincent talked, if we understand our team, if we actually know what's going on in them, if we know what motivates them, then we will know whether we need to challenge and encourage them to go, no, actually, you can do this role. And I actually think you are the right person for it. You just don't want to do it. So let me encourage you. And, or you're right, this maybe isn't the right seat on the bus. So let's try a different one. I think often I've heard it said, the Mark Driscoll got thrown under the bus in the podcast. I can't even think. Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, for saying, hey, people would be on the wrong spot. And it's like, hey, if you're on this seat on the bus and it's not the right seat, then get off, right? Or we're going to kick you off. And that could depending on the situation, that can be right. But I also think a lot of times that goes, well, then you didn't do the hard work to figure out whether that person aligned with your hopes, dreams, and goals, and figure out what their hopes, dreams, and goals are, and how do we make those match up. That, and again, that's a utopian society of business where like everything's all happy and roses. But if you want to really lead people and you want people to be with you in the trenches, best way to do that, turn around and figure out what motivates them. And I guarantee you, it could be money, but 9 times out of 10, it's not. It's probably future. It's safety. It is opportunity. There's a lot of different things outside of that. So
yeah, I think we need to do a separate podcast, maybe a short one, on why the purpose of work is not just money. Because I've noticed in a lot of our social media comments, when we
Sure.
make claims about how important it is to have a sense of purpose and values at work,
Yep.
we always get a comment about, well, I thought work was just for money.
It's just
And I'm like, look, I get it. Like if you didn't get paid from your work, you wouldn't do it. Totally, 100%. Yeah, I got mouths to feed too. However, we're talking about like a lifetime. We're talking about the average, I think, American right now lives past the age of 75. So if in our modern society we have the ability to pursue it, to use Elizabeth's term, and to make Vincent's point, to pack up our purpose and do the types of things that we are predisposed, gifted, and skilled for, it only makes sense that we would pursue the things that are optimized for our happiness and not simply optimized for our economic incentives.
Yeah, well, and I agree. And the only caveat to that would be, look, like you could be right. If you purpose at the end of the day, I don't think can be avoided, right? So, well, and what I mean by that is, what I'm trying to say is at the same time, your purpose doesn't actually have to be your occupation. So, if your purpose is, hey, I want to be a really, really good, dad to my kids, and this job allows me, and it's literally just a paycheck, but I come home and I don't have to think about it, then good on you. You don't have to get motivated for what your work needs to be. Your
Okay,
motivation is
but
something else.
in the spirit of trust and passionate debate, I would say that let's say that you're that guy, right? Who's like, I
Yeah.
just want to be a great, dad to my kids, and I just need a paycheck. But you had the choice between I could be a secretary, a mechanic, a gas station attendant, or I could stack bricks,
Sure.
as a wall builder for a general contractor.
Yep.
You like you're going to choose the thing that you enjoy the most because you got to do it, and nobody wants to hate their life. So I think like that's a little bit of like even my argument towards like the it's not okay. Like I'm going to make a moral statement here, which hopefully people will either love or hate. Like it's not okay to just do something because of the money when you have the opportunity to do something for the money and the meaning. Like if you have a responsibility to wake up and to go out into the world and to do what only you can do, to be the person that only you can be, to to offer up to others your uniqueness. And I think that like that's the argument that I want to make, as a executive coach, as a consultant, is like there's no other Taylor Jessup in the world. And so if Taylor Jessup, is doing something that's entirely unsuited for his makeup, like it's what's he doing? Like, come on, Taylor, like go do the thing that you're made for if you can.
Yeah, I hear that. My pushback, so I'm going to argue on the side of these people on YouTube that comment.
How do
So
I know
yeah,
you?
it's not fun if we don't. We need another podcast because it's a great topic. Is yeah, but if I'm designed and I really want to be at home with my family and that's what I need, and like yes, I like doing construction work, but I can do a job behind a computer that pays me twice as much, and it actually affords me the ability to be home more with my family. To me, that is lining up with your purpose. And so if you are lining up with your purpose, so there's a great book, Living Forward, that talks about work-life balance, and it not necessarily being, do I work as much as I play, which I think is a common misconception, but does my time line up with my values and my priorities? I would say if your time lines up with your values and your priorities, then that's fine. just because I have a gift and I'm a better construction worker than I am a coder, but somebody's willing to pay me more for coding, so I'm going to take the money in this season. I don't know that that's a moral issue. We should debate more on this, because to me, I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't seem moral. It seems like, okay, well, what I really need at the moment, like my moral obligation, if I believe that my highest and best use of myself is to be at home with my family, is to go travel because that's what I love to do, then my highest and best use may be somewhere else outside of construction work, even though I really enjoy it and I'm good at it. And maybe I even do that on the side, but maybe I don't. Maybe I don't, because it doesn't line
I
up.
hear you. So you're saying optimize not necessarily for the highest and best use of Taylor, but optimize for the highest priority and values that Taylor has, which may not be a sense of purpose and meaning and contribution in the marketplace. It might be that at home or in other relationships unrelated to your economic labor.
Correct. 100%. I just don't know that that needs to be your work. Has to be like, you don't have to be the most, like what you're most passionate about. Right. I mean, not saying that you and I are more passionate about work than our own families. I'm just saying, I think that there is room and a good margin for that. I think the most important thing, in my opinion, for people is to just get clear on what that is, to do the work, to figure out what brings you life, what's your purpose, figure out what that is, and then try and do your best to make sure that your time and energy and effort lines up with that, right? Because I could say, on the same token, just to push back on the argument, is like, hey, if I flip that around and I go do construction work because I'm better at it, and it seems like a better use of my time, but really my purpose feels like in life I want to be at home with my family at 5 and not be exhausted from a tiring day of labor. I want to bring that home, and so I may be out of whack in that way. So I'm just not sure that my actual occupation has to be that. That's all.
Look, Taylor, I'm fine with you being wrong about these things. It's totally fine with me.
Hey, Brad, this is why I love you, is that I told you from the very first time that I met you that I was going to do the opposite of what you've told me to do, and I've done that for years now. So, but I think this
great points and counterpoints.
Yeah, better counterpoints to me. No, I think honestly, like we need it'd be fun to do another conversation on that, because I think it'd be really helpful. So, all right, let's wrap up. Let's put a bow on this. Ty Yokum, good friend, Chick-fil-A buddy.
Man, such a cool episode. So many great stories there, and such a balanced conversation, both not releasing the tension on relationships or results. I mean, his consultancy is literally called Measured Results.
Sure.
But he talked about people the entire time.
Right. The byproduct of taking care of your people should be measured results, measurable results. I think you and I have said that like, hey, I work out of this framework, and Shane Kuiper and I have talked about this a lot. He's been on the podcast multiple times. A healthy me can lead to a healthy team, can lead to a healthy bottom line. But often if we get that out of whack and we're focused on a healthy bottom line and hoping that that's going to take care of my team and help take care of me, it typically doesn't work that way, because money comes and goes, man, in every business, right? And we want to play the infinite long game, according to, Simon. Like Sinek would be like, hey, we want to play the long game. So the long game is not necessarily are we winning right now in terms of money in our bottom line. The long game is investing in myself and people, vision, mission, so that we extend that out. So Ty said something great. He talked about, in terms of developing your talent, I think my favorite, and I think this might be your favorite part of that too. I don't know. I could be wrong. We talked about, hey, what about that person that's on your team, right, that you're not training well? And I think he flipped us like, hey, it takes a lot of time to invest in those people and to develop them, and we talked about cutting them free. And he talked about, man, what is the expense of having somebody on your team that you did not train? Right? How did he say it? You might say it better than me.
He said, what if we don't develop them and they stay? Rather than, what if we develop them and they leave?
Right.
So that, his way of, to use your word, flipping that question, I think is so powerful. It's something that we run into all the time as we talk to leaders about investing dollars into coaching and consulting, because there are moments where it feels like it's superfluous, it's expensive, it's nebulous, like what's the clear takeaway from this investment? And at the end of the day, the excuse of, well, I'm not going to develop someone who's going to leave. In fact, this is interesting anecdote. I was on a call with a client yesterday who's saying, I went to my employer. I told them that, I'm basically changing my degree program to take me into a different direction and not to finish my bachelor's in business like I had planned. And they're basically the general manager of this business basically said, well, like, I can't invest in you the same way if I know that you're not going to be long term. Which I'm like, man, I totally relate to that. Like, you have to prioritize how much you invest in people and what your anticipated outcome for that investment is. However, to Ty's point, like, when you take your foot off the gas of developing someone, you're almost never making the right decision. Even if you know that the life on that employee is going to be shorter than what it would be ideally. Like, it's always better to develop because there are immediate, like, real-time applicable advancements that can take place in that person's ability to work. And when your mindset shifts to this person is now a human resource rather than like a being to grow and nurture, like, you totally get everything out of whack. So step off the soapbox here, but this is like, you're totally right. My favorite part of the conversation, so near and dear to like what I'm passionate about. And I know we share that. I love it when you're right. It's typically not happening for you very often. So it's
it doesn't. We all celebrate. It's the Monty Python, for those of you who have seen it. And there was much rejoicing, and everybody in the background says, yay, yay. Those are good. You got two coconuts and you're banging them together. No, I agree. Look, developing people, I think, is super important, regardless of how long they're going to be there. Now, the level and extent may be different. If somebody tells you, I'm here for 3 months, as opposed to somebody that goes, I'm here for 3 years, to a certain extent. But I think two things. One, the question, what does it cost us when they stay and we don't develop them? Two is, you actually have no idea. I actually got a couple more thoughts. You actually have no idea where that's going to go in the long run, because you chose to develop somebody and actually pour into them, right? You and I had somebody we developed at the restaurant. They grew all the way up. They became director of operations, left. And then years later, you hired them again. And ended up like you don't know, right? So like,
here's this, check this out. 90 days, 3 months of labor is over 500 hours of labor. So let's talk about like the reality is that an hour of development, let's say every week, that's 12 hours of development over approximately a 90-day period. Like, that's 2%. That's less than 2% of the actual time that person would be with you over a 90-day period. And so, like, there's no argument in the world where, like, you could tell me that just like that kind of development in anyone is not going to advance the quality of that 500 hours of labor.
Yeah, correct. And so if we're in the true mindset, if we're thinking, hey, people before profits, right? The reason I don't develop people is because it doesn't seem profitable to me. It doesn't seem profitable to my bottom line.
Yes, that's totally true. The reason why a guy like Ty in an organization like Chick-fil-A, though, has mental permission to care about something more than profits is because of the underlying principle of stewardship, which is, look, what we have belongs to the collective community. And obviously from their perspective, there's a, like a theological and a spiritual factor that weighs very heavily on how they see things and how they operate. But even someone who's not coming from that kind of a spiritual background can still leverage the principle of stewardship to say that, like, we collectively own our time, energy, and resources and relationships. So therefore, we're stewarding something that belongs to all of us, not just like, me, I, mine.
Yeah.
And that's fundamentally like the problem with both Wall Street and Main Street, equity, finance, ownership, and everything that comes along with like this inordinately high, unchecked, unbalanced focus on profitability quarter over quarter.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It is maybe playing the wrong game, to steal from the book
Completely.
that I'm
Well
currently
said.
reading. So, and that goes all the way back to, hey, what is your purpose? I guess you could say, hey, if my only purpose is my bottom line, then yeah, maybe don't do it. But also maybe you need to check that. Like maybe maybe you need to do some actual work there. Because here's the crazy thing. If you pour into people that way, if you give that way, I think people will be surprised what that does, like, and how that comes back around. Not that you're giving with the intent to get it back, but I think you might be surprised, A, how much you get as a leader, giving without expecting anything in return. We'd all say giving is always better than getting, right? I mean, you probably wouldn't. But most of us on Christmas, right, as we grow up, we're like, man, it's better to give than to receive. But we're like, in our businesses, we don't necessarily always think that. And in leadership development, we don't always think that. But I think that actually people would be shocked. I think they might be shocked of the tension that you start to put on people's souls in a good way when they're like, God, I got another opportunity that I think I have to take, but you've poured into me so relentlessly. I may not want to take it, so I'm going to stay for a little bit longer than I was planning because I care for you, or how that comes back around in 10 years, or whatever it is. It just ends up being, if you want to call it karma, if you want to, whatever it is, whatever you put out into the universe or whatever religious principle you want to throw on it, I think you will always win that game of just being like, hey, if this person is here, if they're in my charge, I'm going to develop them. So,
Ooh, that was a good cynicism right there too. And Ty
and he says
mentioned
that.
that.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did. He
he
did.
brought
Yeah.
that into the conversation. Here's one thing I would add, Taylor. When I'm working with business owners, I really am guiding them like, hey, you're no one on your team is staying. Just let go of that. Like, I don't even care how long your people stay.
Yeah.
Really, I care about what do they set in motion when they're while they're with you, and what is it that they've set in motion that they're leaving behind. How what kind of condition are they leaving it in? And I think that
Sure.
is a much more realistic mindset in today's sort of work culture and society. It's going to be transient. We cannot change that. What we can drive towards, though, is a meaningful season with people where they set important, valuable work in motion and they leave things better than they found them.
Yep. That's well said. That's a good bow, man.
It's
a good
all
bow
well
on
said, Taylor. I keep trying to tell you that, but you don't.
Brad, this whole episode has been strange from you. You've been flexing. You threw things around in the middle of the episode in your office. You grabbed multiple books that I'm pretty sure you've never read. It was strange.
The golf club. I brought the golf club into things.
Oh, you brought a golf club in, of which I've tried to teach you how to golf.
What can I say?
All right. Well, Elizabeth, Vincent, Ty, fantastic episodes. Figuring out, hey, the importance of purpose. Figuring out what is it like when we turn and actually face our leaders, and then what if we develop them? What if we actually develop them regardless of whether they're staying or not? So those are all, if you haven't checked them out, those are all well worth it. There's a bunch of shorts on Instagram and YouTube that have all those, all the stuff that we talked about, probably summarized in there pretty well. Is I think what I'm trying to say. So, man, with that, I think that's a pretty good lounge wrap up. We did some hot topics. We landed the plane. I think there was some practicality corners in there. I think I mentioned. Yeah, I know. We're gonna Gaffigan's gonna come after us and be like, you guys with your 187 subscribers, I'm coming after you to sue you because you said hot pocket.
I mean, honestly, I gotta say, Taylor, I do gotta say on that note here, just viewing the channel here, we are at 195 subscribers as of right now. So for those of you who are listening and you're not subscribed, you know what? Shame on you. Okay, shame on you.
Whoa.
You need to smash that subscribe button.
Oh gosh,
you
not
need to
shame
go
on
through.
you, Brad.
No,
this
I want.
This is why nobody.
This is why nobody likes our channel, Brad.
Subscribe to the channel, like it, share it with your mother, your father, your children, your siblings, your employees.
Okay.
Everyone needs to know.
Yeah. I guess, and if you're listening to and you missed all of Brad's flexing and all the things that I just commentated on, I am not sorry. You're better off for it. And I'm sorry for all of you who feel shame out there as a result of Brad's last statement. But we do hope you like our channel anyway. So with that, we will be back really soon.